Getting back to that coastal commission question for a while, of course, that whole fate of that seat's been tied up with this balloon track development here in Eureka. Obviously, it's not Northern Humboldt's place to tell Eureka how to develop its waterfront, but then again, we only have one waterfront for this whole county and for this whole Pacific Coast of California. What would you say your vision is for how irreplaceable waterfront property should or shouldn't be developed or should be protected?
I think it's up to the citizens. I mean, I think it's probably good that they get to vote on it and say what they want there. And then whatever they want, they should get. They're the ones that have to see it every day, and they're the ones that are going to shop there. And I think it makes sense that you find out what they want before you spend a lot of money on something. Because it's going to make or break the project. So, yeah, I think it's up to the citizens.
4 years from now, if you're able to look back on a term on the Board of Supervisors, what would you like to see tangible results, or what tangible results would you like to have seen accomplished due to your service on the board?
Yeah, I think that I'd like to see the improvement with the salmon, and having the Klamath River agreement be funded, have the water monitoring be done, and seeing an improvement in our salmon would, that'd be probably my number one. And right next to it would be having jobs, getting some spaces where we change the land use, putting in some light industrial, where people can go in and start their own businesses, kind of like what Arcata does now out in Arcata. So I think those two things would be my number one, and number two is, and I think those would be good goals to go for, and we could get the employment rate up here, and those are all living wage jobs too. So I think those would be good.
The sheriff's department, they kind of had a little, at least their union had a little protest from the courthouse several months back, objecting that their wages aren't up to snuff compared to other law enforcement agencies. There are some frozen positions, of course, as well across county departments, but theirs included. Do you think law enforcement funding has been deprioritized by the current board, and what do you hope to change about that, and how would you fund it?
Yeah, it's with the way the budgets are, it's tough. It's tough all the way around, and everybody has to make, they have to make tough decisions to get those things to balance. But I think it is a prioritization thing, and the sheriff department and public safety has to be one of the top ones. If you're not safe in a community, it's not it's not a good community. Everything else goes down. Your house price goes down, schools go down. So I mean that is really, really important to me is public safety, and I've been knocking on a ton of doors, and that's one of the main themes. It's parts of McKinleyville where people don't feel safe, and they call the sheriff's department, and it takes a while to get out there, or they say, no, the deputy had a domestic abuse out in Oric, and he'll be back in a half an hour. Things like that. I'm hearing these stories, and it really shows that we do not need to prioritize the sheriff's department and give them the funding they need. So.
And as far as funding sources, obviously both Arcata and Eureka have raised their sales taxes. Would Humboldt County consider something similar, or would property taxes be better, or more user fees, or what combination thereof would you want to look at?
Yeah, I think first, we need to make sure that we're going after all the grants we can, before we really impact the people. Times are tough right now, especially whenever you raise taxes, it's, you're taxing the people, and when people are already struggling and you add taxes on top of them, it makes it even harder. So, as a last resort, that would be an option, but I'd like to make sure that we're going after all the grants we can, and then reprioritizing inside the budget itself and making sure that we're being as efficient as possible in other places, and then that would be, an option that would be further down for me.
It seems like on transportation issues, the whole rail trail fight's been moved a little bit away, and more rails with trails, at least south from Arcata to Graycut. Does it seem like the railroad authorities being somewhat obstreperous at this point, where they don't even want people, they won't maintain their own tracks, but they want people to go out and voluntarily fill in the gravel or clear dangerous fire-prone brush from their track area. I mean, at some point, would Humboldt County want to consider just taking direct authority, or with the Harbor Commission taking direct authority for the local rail system?
Yeah, they could. I mean, obviously that I think they're probably fearful that if they let someone come on there, then they could end up losing something, and But there's also some common sense that has to be had, and fire and potholes, and But I hope they do get those trails done. Or I'd be supportive of it. They can coexist. You can have it. There's engineers nowadays that can pretty much engineer whatever you want, and they can put a trail next to that and make it safe, and keep the rail tracks there. So yeah, I'm not real sure what the ultimate problem is, but it's I'm sure it's something like that.
And the whole situation with Humboldt Bay Harbor, it does seem like the vision of deep dredging for these big ships that'll come someday really is just falling apart at this point. Where would you say it'd be best for the county and the harbor to go on coming up with a more sustainable model for keeping Humboldt Bay Harbor going at all? Yeah,
well, again, the having that pulp mill shut down, or saying it's not going to open ever, is kind of a big blow. But I don't think big ships are going to ever come in here. They're going to be smaller ships, maybe the 2,000 container ships, and so they don't have to do deep dredging. They do the same dredging they do now, and do some the short sea shipping ideas is really interesting. They have a model already made for the harbor district, and I think that's probably the way it's going to go, and it's more sensible. It's on a smaller scale, and it just seems to me more doable than this big idea of having rails and these big huge ships coming in and out of here. I just don't ever see it happening. It's so expensive too, that I think that the smaller ships, and having the model that the district has already developed, I think that's the way to go.
Well, one more question on transportation. County, as well as the city of Fortuna, divert a significant amount of the state transit dollars, state gas tax and so forth, from mass transit provision to their road fund. Obviously the county has miles of road that really aren't maintained well enough, so one can understand their motive. But at the same time, there's no Sunday bus service whatsoever. You can't get around very effectively in the evenings, and people just work for a living. Can't rely on the bus service to get to and from work on time. Do you think the county needs to consider getting more of those transit dollars actually into mass transit programs for seniors, disabled students, and so forth?
Yeah, I mean, there's the people who do ride the buses and all that. They have to have that to work. They have to have that to get around, and so. I think it's really important for those people that they have that source of transportation, because they can't get to school, they can't get to work, they can't get to the grocery store without that. What else I'd like to see them do too is, and I thought that maybe having like some community members who are really interested to come together and figure out a way to make it more user-friendly on the bus system, because I think there's a lot more people who would ride them, which would be more money for them. They would they need more ridership is what they need. But it doesn't seem like the routes they have now and the times aren't they're not efficient for people to get to and from work. They got to wait 2 hours to get back to where they were going. So if you have any access to a car or a thumb, you're going to use it. So I think that there's ways though that they can make that system more efficient, get more ridership, and then maybe you wouldn't need as many dollars diverted over there to get those extra services.
I would catch a hell for not bringing it up, so I apologize in advance. But the whole revelation that was in an anonymously maintained blog and not even in reputable media, which is a whole other strange question in and of itself, whether anonymous hate blogs should be reporting news. But the whole issue of character has come up in the race as far as the DUI. Well, your opponent, to his credit perhaps, said he didn't want to directly comment to it, but I did ask him how would he handle that sort of situation if it came up in the future with another supervisor or a senior member of county staff. I guess I'd ask you, how are you handling what's come up about that? and how would you handle it if it came up with a senior staffer or a fellow supervisor in the future?
The way I'm handling it now is same as I have been. You know, I've been completely upfront about it. I took responsibility for it when it happened. I wasn't a candidate yet when it happened, you know, and I knew that all this would come out when I was running. I didn't know to what extent or if people cared or not, but obviously an anonymous person cared enough to drop it off. But the you know, I've got to do a lot of good things afterwards. You know, I've got to go to the schools and talk to the kids about, you know, what drinking and driving can do, and you know, and I told them about my experience, and you know, and I've also not drank since that happened, and just cut that part out of my life. And so for me, it's been, you know, my life's been better since it happened. So and as far as someone else having it happen to them, you know, if it was a senior person, you know, I think that they're going to have to take responsibility for what happened and do all the right things. And you know, people make mistakes, and hopefully that they learn from them and don't repeat the same mistakes ever. And so that's pretty much what I'm trying to do.
Gotcha. Pat Higgins and also Mr. Jeff Lytle were knocked out coming into the second round. What would you say you're really trying to do to reach out to their voters and try to bring them into your support base to get over the 50% mark?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I'm just trying to be myself and showing people that I'm someone that listens to all different types of people. You know, I don't have just one group of friends, and that's all I listen to. You know, I've got people who are very liberal that are on my campaign committee to people who are conservative on my campaign committee, and they all coexist. And surprisingly enough, they all get along pretty well. And you know, we're all working for a common goal of making Humboldt County a better place. And I think if we keep that in mind, then we can all work together. And so going and knocking on doors and talking to people and letting them know what I'm all about. And you know, I think that's what it's going to take. And you know, I don't know if I have any specific plan to go and target the Higgins voters, because I don't know if you really know exactly who they are. But I'm just trying to meet as many people as I can and get the word out about what I'm about.
Well, is there anything else you'd like to say to the voters as they head to the polls on November 2nd?
Well, I'm excited about this being in the general election, and hopefully I'll knock on your door soon. And I want to say that it's a pleasure, and I hope that everybody goes out and votes and knows how important it is to go out and let your voice be heard. And thank you, and I appreciate the interview.
Ryan Sundberg, thanks so much for coming down to Haspings today.
Thank you.